From failure to fluent, I stood outside the glass-walled office, my palms sweaty, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The interviewer's voice still echoed in my head. "I'm sorry, Zain, but your English is just not strong enough for this role." It was the third job interview I'd failed that month, and each rejection stung more than the last. I wanted to scream, to cry, to disappear. Instead, I forced a smile, thanked the interviewer, and shuffled out into the humid evening air. Growing up in a small town where English was rarely spoken, I'd always dreamed of working in a big city, maybe even abroad. I pictured myself in a sharp suit, confidently pitching ideas in a boardroom or chatting effortlessly with colleagues over coffee. But that dream felt like it was slipping through my fingers. My English was a mess, broken sentences, mispronounced words, and a constant fear of being laughed at. Every time I opened my mouth, I could feel the judgment, the pity, the dismissal. That night, I sat on my creaky bed in my tiny rented room, staring at a pile of unpaid bills. My savings were dwindling, and my confidence was crumbling faster. I'd moved to the city with such high hopes, but now I felt like an outsider, isolated by my own tongue. Friends invited me to parties, but I'd make excuses to avoid them, terrified of fumbling my words or being the odd one out. I was 24, and I felt like a failure. But something shifted that night. As I lay awake, replaying the interviewer's words, a spark of defiance flickered inside me. I was tired of feeling small, tired of letting my broken English define me. I made a promise to myself. In 6 months, I would speak English fluently. I didn't know how, but I knew I had to try. Little did I know that decision would change everything, but not without a fight. Growing up, my world was small but warm. My town was a cluster of dusty streets lined with modest houses, where everyone knew each other's business. We spoke our native language, a melodic tongue that flowed easily from my lips. English, though, it was a distant concept, something we heard in Hollywood movies or pop songs on the radio. In school, English classes were a formality, rote memorization of grammar rules and vocabulary lists that I promptly forgot. My teachers meant well, but they weren't fluent either. We'd recite "the cat is on the mat" like it was a sacred mantra, but no one taught us how to actually speak asterisk. When I moved to the city at 22, I thought I could fake it. I'd memorized a few phrases, practiced a generic "hello, how are you?" in front of the mirror. But the real world wasn't a classroom. My first job interview was a disaster. I'd applied for a customer service role at a call center, thinking it would be my ticket to a better life. The interviewer asked, "Can you describe a time you solved a problem under pressure?" I froze. My mind raced, but the words wouldn't come. I stammered something about problem, good, fix, and the interviewer's polite smile faded into a grimace. I didn't get the job. Socially, it was even worse. I remember a networking event where I tried to join a conversation. A woman asked me about my hobbies, and I wanted to say I loved hiking. Instead, I said, "I like walk mountain." The group burst into laughter, thinking I was joking. My face burned with shame as I mumbled an excuse and slipped away. That night I avoided my roommates, unable to face their questions about my day. I felt like I was living in a bubble, cut off from the world by my inability to communicate. The rejections piled up. Job applications were ignored, or I'd make it to an interview only to crash and burn. "Your technical skills are great," one recruiter told me, "but you need to work on your communication." I started to believe I'd never belong in this city, that I'd have to return to my town, tail between my legs. The thought of facing my family, who'd pinned their hopes on me, was unbearable. I was drowning in self-doubt, and every failure felt like another weight pulling me under. But then, something happened that made me pause. I was scrolling through my phone one evening, avoiding yet another social event, when I stumbled across a video of a motivational speaker. He talked about failure not as an end, but as a starting point. Every setback, he said, is a setup for a comeback. His words hit me like a jolt. I realized I could keep running from my fears, or I could face them head on. But how? I needed help, and I needed it fast. The next day, I was at a local cafe, sipping cheap coffee and feeling sorry for myself, when I overheard a conversation at the next table. A woman was speaking fluent English to a friend, her words clear and confident. I couldn't help but eavesdrop. She was a teacher named Miss Aisha, who ran a small English conversation group for non-native speakers. Something about her warmth, the way she laughed easily, made me think, maybe she could help me. Gathering every ounce of courage, I approached her table. My voice shook as I said, "Excuse me, I hear you teach English?" She smiled, not the pitying kind I was used to, but a genuine one. "Yes," she said. "Why don't you join us?" That was the moment everything changed. Miss Aisha became my mentor, my guide, and the person who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. The first meeting of her conversation group was terrifying. There were 6 of us, all non-native speakers, sitting in a circle in a community center. I was the quietest, barely speaking, afraid of making mistakes. But Miss Aisha had a way of making everyone feel safe. She taught us our first key phrase, break the ice. To start a conversation in a friendly way, especially with strangers. The best way to learn English, she said, is to dive in and break the ice with someone new. Don't wait for perfection, just start. I practiced by introducing myself to another group member, stumbling over my words, but feeling a tiny spark of pride when she smiled and responded. Miss Aisha gave me a plan for the next 6 months. Learning English isn't about memorizing rules, she said. It's about living the language. She suggested practical strategies: watch English movies with subtitles, listen to podcasts, and practice speaking daily, even if it was just to myself. She also recommended keeping a journal to write down new words and phrases. I was skeptical but desperate, so I committed to her plan. The first month was brutal. I'd watch movies like The Pursuit of Happiness, pausing every few minutes to jot down words like resilience or opportunity. I'd repeat them in front of the mirror, trying to mimic the actors' accents. But when I tried speaking to real people, like ordering food at a restaurant, I'd choke. Once I meant to say, "Can you make it quick?" but said, "Can you make it kick?" The waiter laughed, and I wanted to crawl under the table. I almost quit. I told Miss Aisha I wasn't cut out for this, that I'd never be fluent. She looked me in the eye and taught me another phrase, stay the course, to keep going despite challenges. Learning is messy, she said, but if you stay the course, you'll see results. She was right. By month 2, I noticed small changes. I started understanding more of the movies without subtitles. I could follow conversations in the group better, even chiming in with a sentence or two. One day, I managed to break the ice with a stranger at the bus stop, asking about the weather. It was a simple exchange, but it felt like I'd climbed a mountain. Miss Aisha celebrated every win, no matter how small, and her encouragement kept me going. But then, I hit a wall. Month 3, I applied for another job, thinking I'd improved enough to nail the interview. I prepared for days, practicing answers in English. The interview started well, but when they asked an unexpected question, "How would you handle a difficult client?" I froze. I couldn't think on my feet to respond quickly and effectively in a challenging situation. My words came out jumbled, and I saw the interviewer's expression shift. Another rejection. I went home and threw my journal across the room, convinced I'd never get it right. Miss Aisha didn't let me give up. She sat me down and said, "Zain, you're learning to think on your feet. Mistakes are part of it. Keep practicing, and it'll come." She suggested role-playing interviews with the group, which was both terrifying and helpful. I also started listening to English podcasts during my commute, repeating phrases like, "I understand your concern," or "let me clarify." Slowly, I began to feel more comfortable expressing myself, even under pressure. By month 5, I was making progress. I could hold longer conversations without panicking. I even started joking in English, which felt like a miracle. One day, I explained a complex idea to the group about my favorite book, and Miss Aisha clapped. "You just learned to get your point across, to communicate your ideas clearly," she said. "That's huge!" I beamed, feeling a confidence I hadn't known was possible. But the real test was coming, and it would push me to my limits. Month 6 arrived, and I saw an ad for my dream job, a marketing assistant at a startup. The role required strong communication skills, and I knew this was my chance to prove myself. I spent weeks preparing, practicing answers, and recording myself to check my pronunciation. Miss Aisha and the group ran mock interviews, throwing curveball questions to help me think on my feet. I was nervous but determined to stay the course. The interview day was a blur of nerves and adrenaline. I wore my best shirt, ironed to perfection, and walked into the office with my head high. The interviewer, a kind but sharp woman named Miss Carter, started with small talk. I took a deep breath and used what I'd learned to break the ice, asking about her weekend. She smiled, and I felt a surge of hope. The questions got tougher, but I was ready. When she asked, "Why should we hire you?" I didn't freeze. I spoke clearly, explaining my skills and passion for marketing. I even shared a story about helping a local business with a small campaign, making sure to get my point across. Miss Carter nodded, scribbling notes. Then came the moment I'd been dreading, a role play where I had to pitch an idea on the spot. My heart raced, but I remembered Miss Aisha's advice to think on my feet. I took a moment, organized my thoughts, and delivered a pitch that felt natural, even confident. As I left the office, I felt lighter, like I'd left my old self behind. 2 days later, my phone rang. "Zain, we'd like to offer you the position," Miss Carter said. "You really made a great impression, created a strong, positive impact." I nearly dropped the phone. I'd done it. I'd gone from stammering through interviews to landing my dream job. The first day at work was surreal. My colleagues were friendly, and I didn't shy away from conversations. During a team meeting, I shared an idea and got my point across without stumbling. After work, I joined my co-workers for drinks, and for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I even cracked a joke that broke the ice, earning laughs and a pat on the back. I was no longer the quiet guy hiding in the corner. I was part of the group. Looking back, those 6 months were the hardest of my life, but they taught me more than just English. I learned to face my fears, to embrace mistakes, and to stay the course no matter what. I realized that fluency isn't just about words. It's about confidence, connection, and believing in yourself. My journey from failure to fluent wasn't easy, but it was worth every struggle. I went from a nervous kid who couldn't string a sentence together to someone who could walk into a room and make a great impression. I learned to think on my feet, to break the ice with strangers, and to get my point across clearly. Most importantly, I learned to stay the course, even when I wanted to give up. If you're reading this and struggling with English, or any challenge, know this. You're not alone and you're not stuck. Start small. Watch a movie, learn a phrase, talk to a friend, make mistakes, laugh at them, and keep going. Your dream job, your confidence, your voice, they're all within reach. Take that first step today. And who knows? In 6 months, you might be telling your own story of triumph. Key English phrases. Here are the 5 phrases I learned on my journey, with examples to help you use them. 1. Make a great impression. To create a strong, positive impact on someone. Example: smiling and speaking confidently during the interview helped me make a great impression on the hiring manager. 2. Think on your feet. To respond quickly and effectively in a challenging situation. Example: when my boss asked for a last-minute idea, I had to think on my feet and suggest a new strategy. 3. Break the ice. To start a conversation in a friendly way, especially with strangers. Example: I broke the ice at the party by asking about her favorite movie, and we talked for hours. 4. Get your point across. To communicate your ideas clearly so others understand. Example: during the meeting, I used simple words to get my point across about the project's benefits. 5. Stay the course. To keep going despite challenges or setbacks. Example: learning English was tough, but I decided to stay the course and practice every day. Now it's your turn. Which English word did you learn today? What will be your day 1? Write it in the comments below. Let's grow together. Like, share, and subscribe for more real English stories that grow your heart and your vocabulary. See you in the next story.